Annemarie Hou, Executive Director of the United Nations Office of Partnerships. Great to see you.
Fantastic to be with you, Tony, again.
Here in Munich, of all places.
Where it's a little cold
and rainy.
And a little bit rainy.
But it's okay because we're here for good causes.
Absolutely.
And we're on the sidelines, I should say, of the Munich Security Conference, which is about to begin. I'm curious, because I know you're here to talk about Women Rise for All. Let's first define that program for people that are unfamiliar, and then we'll talk a bit about its connection to Munich.
So Women Rise for All is really about bringing women leaders together. The Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed, saw during the COVID pandemic that this time of great turmoil, that women were really coming to the front lines of leading in really different and creative ways. And how can we continue to highlight their work and bring people together? So it's a way to connect not only with the UN, but with each other and different organizations across governments and sectors. And we like to start by meeting and convening before a major conference like this, so people have a chance to reconnect. What are you working on? What's interesting? How can I support you? Where are our common goals? How can we support each other in making sure that we're doing right by humanity?
And do you find it's particularly significant and relevant to be here as a security and defense conference is beginning? And how do you see that through a gender lens?
Absolutely. When we were, we've talked about this before, there is about 14% of world leaders are women. Surprisingly, 14% is also the percentage of mediators in peace processes. We need both of those numbers, those percentages to go way up, because we know when women are at the negotiating table, at the peace table, it's more likely that peace agreements are going to stick, more than 35% more likely for success.
And why is that exactly?
I think it's because there's different perspectives. I think women do naturally bring more people in, are looking around to see who's missing, are thinking about including everyone in the processes that are going to think about how it affects communities and how they affect each other. And so when you only have one part, if you only have men, you're only going to get one perspective. But I think if you add women to the table and you have the parity, you're going to get that interesting intersection of ideas.
It's funny. So in Paris last year, I asked the same question of Michelle Bachelet, the former Chilean president. And she said she feels women bring an empathy to the situation. That sounds like a generalization, but what do you think about that in the way you approach a problem?
I think it's true. I think there is, if you think about all the different traits we bring, I think there is something to be said that women are often mothers and have families, and they are part of families. They are part of communities. They see things in different kinds of ways. And not all women, of course, are alike. But I think in general, women are oftentimes, because sometimes they are the only ones at a table, they are looking around to see who's missing. And I don't know that that always happens if the table is only men.
And because it's still, as you pointed out, only 14% of world leaders are female, the number for parliamentarians and members of government is a little better, but not a ton better. It was funny. So in preparing for this, I was looking back at Angela Merkel's career. Of course, we're in Germany. And it was only a couple months ago that she passed her 20-year anniversary of becoming chancellor. And unfortunately, very little has changed. There's been some positive growth in the numbers of women participating at the highest levels, but it's nothing astronomical. And I'm sort of wondering, what do you think it's going to take to get there?
I think it has to start at the community. And I think girls have to see that there's a pathway, and they have to be encouraged. And there has to be an ecosystem there to support each step of the way. It's pretty difficult, I think, for any politician right now to think about, why do I want to be a politician when there is so much out there that could be attacks coming at you in all different directions, whether it's online or in person, and all of these things we know to be true now that maybe wasn't the same. So I think it's even more, the hurdles are even higher. And again, that's why we have to create these networks. We have to have mentors. We have to have pathways for women to see themselves in these leadership positions. I'm sure Angela Merkel was an inspiration to so many young women when she was chancellor. And we need more in the high visible jobs in order to see ourselves in these leaders.
So we're talking about women in leadership and the impact that they can have positively on helping to solve these crises. But I was also struck by the way your research has staggering numbers of women and girls who are living in conflict areas.
There's something like 600 million women and girls who are living within 50 miles of a conflict zone. That's very big numbers. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about what do women leaders bring, that empathy, the compassion, I think a lot of it comes also from lived experience. Being far more impacted, whether it's from a man-made conflict or potentially a humanitarian setting caused by a climate crisis. All of these situations, when women are part of those conversations about what is needed within their communities, everyone's going to do better.
So we talked last year about We the Women, this really exhaustive survey that your organization did, something like 25,000 women globally and in dozens of countries. And I was struck by a couple of things. First, when we talk about barriers to entry or barriers to equality, how many of them said mental health?
I think more people are realizing the head is attached to the body. And when we talk about physical well-being, we have to talk about mental health well-being too. It's two sides of the same coin. And mental health, I think people are becoming more open about it. People are understanding what it means. They're understanding that there are services and that there's access to services. Unfortunately, not enough. And not enough we can, and we need to do more around the stigma surrounding it, so that we can have these open conversations, whether we're talking about our physical health or mental health.
And we're talking here about conflict situations and humanitarian situations. And it's interesting, of course, people focus on primary needs of humanitarian workers coming in to provide aid and education and food. And perhaps mental health is not top of mind in those situations. And as you just said, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people, right?
And when we are in these communities, when everyone has a voice at the table, they tell us we not only need food, water, shelter, we need access to education, and we need to be in the mind space to be able to do all of these things. And so we do need mental health support, psychosocial support. And right now, it's just not this big priority, but communities are telling us it is an equal priority to everything else. And it has to be part of the services that we are providing as also growing together and creating together.
And then finally, on a positive note, indeed, I was really struck by the level of optimism. And it didn't just come from We the Women survey, although there was a lot of optimism from women in the global south that their lives are going to improve. By the way, that was not true of G7 countries. Here in Munich, just this week, the Munich Security Conference released their annual report that had a very similar finding, that even in areas that have been besieged by conflict or climate crisis, there's optimism. What do you attribute that to?
I attribute it to women having voice, agency, to really think through what it is they want to see. And when they have that voice and agency, I think they have a much more optimistic viewpoint. It's not always the case that we can follow through and that they don't always have that space. Increasingly, we need to be looking around the table to see who's missing. Who in the community do people look up to? Who are they going to listen to? Who do they want to get advice from? And oftentimes, that's women.
Mm-hmm. Annemarie Hou, thanks so much as always.
Thank you so much, Tony, for having me.